call the meeting to order. This is the January 16th, 2024 meeting of the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board for the town of Southampton. Present in person, we have Martha Green, Tim Ganettis, Susan Sherry Clark, Jim Jeff Givens, Vicky Kahn. Vicky Kahn is on Zoom, and Barbara Roberts is on Zoom participating. We also have Bill Hine and Stephanie Davis and myself, Ed Wisnowski, as present. There are present 7 people in the room, which makes for an official quorum for the board to conduct official business. The meeting is being conducted under New York State law and town law providing for in-person and remote participation. Individuals who want to undertake remote participation by activating the Zoom links found on the published agenda and at the town clerk's agenda and meeting portal on the town website. Viewing only is done by activating the live button at the top of the town clerk's meeting portal page. The online participation is being moderated by Charles of CTV. For remote comment on a particular agenda item, please notify CTV via the chat or the raise hand function relative to an agenda item so that comment can be made. To reduce wait times for online and in-person participants, our practice is to advance agenda items for those parties. Commentators will need to provide name, agency if relevant, and place of residence or business for their comments. With that, we can proceed to the agenda. We've had a change of staff with respect to the production of minutes and support services. So we do not have minutes prepared for our December 19, 2023 meeting at this time. So we will not have minutes approval. We also had some late matters submitted after the agenda was published, including the proposal to relocate a building from 520 Montauk Highway to 85 Eastway Lane, which some material was forwarded to board members earlier. I think, and we also, is there one other item?
2297 Montauk.
Oh, 2297 Montauk Highway with
Yes.
respect to a referral from the ZBA on a proposed construction which would take place in the brand new historic district in the village of Bridgehampton. So with that, I think unless others have some agenda items they want to mention beforehand, we can proceed. Okay. We do have an applicant interested in 5 Halsey Avenue in East Quogue, and if Stephanie, you provided some comments on it.
Yes, I made a quick site visit this last weekend and circulated some information concerning 5 Halsey Avenue. This is a modest home in, it's got an AYB of 1930. It has had previous addition made onto what is the front street-facing side of the building. It is on a street with some other historic resources in fairly close proximity, as noted on the map, on the materials that I circulated. Wait till you get that up on the screen, Ed. Okay, it is.
Is this it?
No, that is not it. That is it.
This is it.
That's it, yeah. Took me a little while to figure out the application, because this house is a little unusual in that the actual house faces the driveway on the west side of the property there. It does not actually face the street. What faces the street is the side of the I guess you would call it the gable end, and has a small bump out on it that is an office that was added at a later date after the original construction. The house is in need of some repairs. A number of the windows are deteriorated. There's clearly some structural issues with the roof. It's a growing family that lives in the house, and they need some more space. What they propose to do is put an addition on the street-facing side of the dwelling, removing that little office bump out. And there's also going to be an addition on the back side that is not visible from the street. And I'll clarify at this point, there is an evergreen hedge along the street side. You can see on the other side, next to the driveway, there's also a hedge there. There is a hedge all the way around the back. And there's, what is shown in this aerial photograph are trees on what would be the east side. Those trees have now been removed to prepare for access for construction. But in speaking with the owner, he intends to revegetate with another evergreen hedge along that side for privacy reasons. So the only view of this house from a street is actually from the driveway end. So what you see is part of the side that has the front entrance and the part of the side that has, at this point, that little office bump out on it. And in the materials I sent to you, I had in there pictures of the various sides of the house and the renderings of what the side is going to look like after the addition is put on. And I didn't have any issues with any of the proposed changes, with one exception, and that's what the street-facing facade will look like. It's on, I think, the third page of what I was circulating, third or fourth page. What's proposed there is basically a wall with 3 windows in it and a roof that's going to have a little gherkin cut on what would be the east side, presumably because of the pyramid rule. If you could just scroll down a little bit, Ed. Next one more. Yeah, so that's what you see from the end of the driveway. This is what the community sees right now. And if you scroll down to where the rendering is, Ed, this will be what that end of the house looks like. And I thought, since this is a totally new addition going on to the house, there was an opportunity here to perhaps have a facade that was a little bit more in keeping with the historic nature of the other houses on this street. Not that all of them are historic, but some of them in the immediate proximity are. And I had brought this up with Bill, and he had suggestion of perhaps a couple of dormers in that roof area there, and perhaps considering putting a gherkin on the other end of the roof so that the roof looked more symmetrical. Mm-hmm. Right now, the roof looks a little asymmetrical. So I don't know if our architects here on the board have any other suggestions for how this facade could be improved. Keeping in mind that these recommendations are just advisory; they're not binding in any way. I don't know if Jeff or Tim, you had any thoughts?
Yeah,
Yes.
Flores, work for Southampton Engineering. We prepared the drawings.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to.
State name?
Yeah.
Andres Flores. I work for Southampton Engineering. We prepared the drawings.
Yes.
Yeah, we can definitely add some dormers on that side of the house to give it a little more historical look. Yeah, we're open to that.
And can you put the little clip on that one gable? So
I'll-
that you would see it symmetrical in the front?
Okay, I'll talk to the owner because they like the gable end, but
Mhm.
definitely something we can talk about.
Yeah, I know how the gable end does work with that front facade of the house.
Oh, because the
with
front
other-
is the driveway.
Yeah, the front is the driveway
Okay.
in this
Well,
case, and
maybe
then, you
just
know,
the
how it
dormers.
will look
Yeah.
from that
But
side,
if you have two symmetrical dormers up there, that should really help a
that
lot.
will certainly help.
Especially because you're not really seeing anything with the roof.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
know.
Well, and I think it would also help bring more light into those bedroom, those are bedroom areas, I believe, underneath
Yeah.
the windows there.
Mhm. Yeah, for the right side, we had to cut it on an angle just because of the pyramid, because we
Right.
had, yeah.
Yeah,
But we don't like to have to keep the gable on the other side, but.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, you know, with the other comment I made in here is that I understand the owner plans to put solar panels on the roof here.
Mhm.
And this being the south-facing side, I think it would be preferable if the dormers were on the, you know, the other roofs. You've got
Sure.
an east-facing side.
Yeah, the solar, not the
This
dormers.
is solar
Yeah,
panel.
the
thing.
solar,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the solar.
But don't
Um,
put the solar on the street facing facade if you can help it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a lot of roof up there, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot
Yes.
of roof on the other side that
Mhm.
doesn't face the street.
Yeah.
And both of these,
Yeah,
Sides
those
of-
are
yeah.
east and west facing roofs. I think it would be preferable to avoid placing it on the south facing roof, which is the one that faces the street.
Mhm.
But the solar panels are not in this application,
Okay,
so that's just something he told me when I was there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
does anybody know why a house might have been situated facing its driveway? Was it remodeled? Did you detect any?
No, it looked like the windows on most of the volume were original. And, you know, there was nothing that suggested to me that the house had been significantly remodeled in the past, other than the office being added to it. It has a different foundation style than the rest of the house. It didn't appear to have been associated with an estate or something else that had perhaps been broken up in the past. And it is an AYB 1930, so you can see it on the older maps. So it's not clear to me why it was made to face this way. It's not the usual arrangement on this street or in most streets.
So basically, we have recommendations, but no objections to anything that
No.
you're planning to do. And we'll respond to the building department with those comments, and things should go forward from there.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Are you here for a particular,
Yes,
which one?
the 520, the Atterbury House at 520.
Oh, 520, okay. Why don't we take that up? Are you Pamela?
I am.
Okay. Why don't you come forward and, are you familiar with David Wilcox here?
Oh, hi, we've talked, yes. Nice to meet
Okay.
you finally.
He's
What-
he probably will be the point person for things going forward.
Okay,
In
fantastic.
terms of,
Well, thank you for letting me, in such short notice, show up here tonight, and I appreciate it. Even though it's a miserable night outside. So, this is a kind of funny situation. The property at 520 Montauk Highway, East Montauk Highway, was sold, and on it is an Atterbury house, and honestly, I don't know what year it was built, but, guessing 1860s maybe, 1870s, not sure. And it was purchased by the Peconic Land Trust and the Neemuck Nation. And their plan is to return the property to its original grade or look, because it's a sacred burial ground of sorts, this whole area apparently. So the Sugarloaf, I think is the name of it. And we're standing around one day wondering what's going on with this house. And they said, oh, well, we're gonna rip the house down. And Blair, who's sitting right here, who's a builder, or Dibble, says, well, why don't we move the house? Because it's a crime to rip this house down. I mean, the house somebody spent millions on this house, restoring it, redoing it, putting in new windows, redoing the chimneys, and then, you know, he passed away and it was sold. And it's been sitting vacant since, but it's a beautiful house, and it just seemed like a crime. So it turns out that at 85 Eastway, which is on the corner of the highway, is an old barn. Now, unfortunately, was abused. Let's put it that way. And
You have to be careful here.
Yes.
Because this property has been before the landmarks
Yes.
board before.
yes, but it's now, you know, it was in its entirety. I have pictures of actually
Yeah.
both of the properties here. So if anybody wants to take a look at the house and Blair came up with this brilliant idea that why don't we talk to the owner, because nothing was going on with this property. It's been sitting, you know, vacant, and, you know, was sort of partially done, and now it was in bad repair. And maybe it would be the only place we could really logistically move the house because of the size of the house and, you know, the number of turns you could make and how many,
Wires.
wires and everything else that would take to move this house. And he went through and got some of the logistics taken care of, met with the house mover. Yeah, and then with the heads of both of the Conic Land Trust and the Neomark Nation. And everybody was in favor of it, including the owner of 85 Eastway. So it looks like we could possibly do it. And David said to me, Wilcox, Mr. Wilcox, said that if we landmark them, it was possible to possibly keep both buildings on the property. So I proceeded there was a variance issued, and I marked that on that plan as to where the boundaries of the variance were given. And if this is of any help, so there are two dotted squares. You can see here and here. So one was the original location of the barn, and then it was relocated, and an additional property of the same size, a new building was given permission to be built. And so I took that and I used those setbacks and tried to place the house on the property, and then in addition to place the barn. So the juxtaposition ends up being the two striped areas, which would be, this would be the house, and then this would be the barn. And in fact, it really is not bad, and it doesn't overstep the lot coverage, which is surprising. And we could also maintain the pool, or move the pool. The pool's not usable at the moment, it leaks and has cracks, it's gotta be filled in. And it also helps the situation because we moved the entrance to the property away from the intersection, which the variance was given, but the entrance to this property was moved up here, which I live here, so I go in and out this constantly. It would be a giant problem if there was a driveway here. You would probably have to put a stop sign at the end of the driveway because
Yeah.
it's really bad here. You can't see as it is around the corners. So people come in and out and nobody sees anybody. And, you know, it's not good. So, anyway, so it's not, we wouldn't be asking for a lot in terms of a variance, but, because it's two residences basically on the same property,
Mhm.
I guess we could probably keep this one as a barn and this is a residence, and then it wouldn't be an issue, but I think that's about as far as we go, but we, need to know how to proceed, and I'm kind of like a little lost. Do I apply for a demolition permit for the house, which is not really getting demolished, but we have to move it, so what kind of permit? No one seems to really know what you do, and I'm in the same boat, so I don't have any idea actually what permits I do need and where to start and how to get this moving. And I'd like to, get it before, while the irons are hot, before somebody says, oh, he's got the sort of the financial wherewithal at the moment. I don't know how long that will last, so I just want to get going.
It's a big project, I don't know if.
It is, it's a big project, it's kind of a big undertaking.
It's a wonderful house.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
it is a wonderful house, and the thing is, the guy would be getting a free house. I mean, basically, no, not quite free, but moving it is probably, we figured about $250,000 or something like that. It's a very expensive move, but he's getting, it's like an 8,000 square foot house. It's like you're getting,
But it's also sensitive because we're taking it across the Indian grounds that are sensitive. So we can't really dig the ground. We have to fill on top of it and maintain like a 10% grade to move this house down, because the trailer that the house moves on will only tip so far. But it's very doable, and when you go in this house, you can see the old timbers and the wood floor system. The house really is in very, very good. Somebody's done a really nice job of renovating this house.
You have to come to the podium.
Yeah, the comments that are being made cannot be picked up by
Do I need to come up there?
yeah.
We've been in this house, haven't we?
I'm Larry Dibble, sorry to speak out of turn, but
Yeah.
the house is spectacular. I've walked through it, and I've been building here in Southampton now for many, many years. And I really would like to save this house. So I think it's a worthy effort. And the barn, by the way, the walls of the first floor of that are not in great shape. They've been cut up for windows, and people just cut them and put a window in. So the first floor walls need to be redone. But that floor system in the loft area and everything in the roof still's in great shape. We can save that, put a new roof on it. It'll be spectacular. And I think from a cost standpoint that he may want, and it may make sense, to make that like a barn. Leave it open in the bottom and just use the loft kind of as it is. So I think when you take the two that are both Atterbury buildings and put them on that same lot, right there on the corner, and the way Pam has laid it out, it's very doable, and I think that it'll end up being, I think if the barn's turned the right way, it has that, the loft entry with the little roof and the arm that sticks out where the pulleys where they used to lift things up and put it in the loft. Turned the right way, it's gonna be historically kind of correct. And I'd like to return it that way if I could. So the kind of work that I do, if you look at 23 South Main Street, the renovation of that house, I did that project, and the owners let me,
32.
oh, 32, I'm sorry. The owners let me, use circa 1900 windows and make the thing feel like it was done in the 1890s or 1860s. So,
Well, one of the things that occurs, you think it might require a variance to accomplish.
We will for the barn, because it's sitting, it's not within any, I didn't make it any closer to the Eastway Drive. It's two front yards, so we need an exception for the second front yard off of Eastway, but it's already been granted for the previous design, and I'm not any closer to Eastway with the thing, so I feel like it won't be a big ask. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like it won't be a big ask, but I still think they're
Further from
gonna,
Eastway,
Yeah.
it's
they're gonna
better
ask for it.
position.
But the first step would seem to be
Okay.
getting the ZBA to approve whatever is needed in order to accomplish the relocation
Mhm.
of historic structure onto this property. And that, I don't know who would do that. Somebody would have to make that application, or,
No, I would make, I will do the applications,
Oh,
whatever
well,
it takes,
okay.
that's fine.
The other question is, if it's to be designated a landmark structure, a report would have to be prepared on it with respect to at least as much of the history that can be determined at this point, and passed before our board, which is not a hard job, I think. But it's a hard job sometimes getting the property histories together, but.
But I feel like the Atterbury would, there's enough, maybe there's not the specific house, certainly there's a lot of information about him, so I don't, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it, we visited this property
Been on this.
a number of times, and, the question, where did this barn come from? It was a question of, it was relocated from someplace, and
Yeah, I
soon,
mean, it's very interesting, all the buildings, so there's only the 3 that seem to be left that are Atterbury properties that are on the Atterbury Hills Estates, or whatever you call this area, that area. So there's the carriage house, which has been renovated and someone lives in, which is quite beautiful. And then there's this barn, and then the house. But I don't think any of them are in the original location, which is unusual. Possibly the carriage house, because it's a brick building maybe. But the original Atterbury Estate House was at the top, the high up on the hill and across from that carriage house, and the walls are still there, but the house is, I think it burned down twice from what I understand.
Yeah.
So this is kind of all that's left.
well, that's one element of this that has to take place, and the question is there support from the Landmarks Board as it pushes its way, a project like this would push its way through, an attempt to make it come into being. And my inquiry of my colleagues is, are you generally of a positive mind about the
Definitely.
Landmarks Board supporting
Yeah.
this project?
Absolutely.
I think
Yep.
it's
Definitely,
definitely
yeah.
to save.
So it seems worth saving.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
mean,
beautiful house.
yeah, the thought of demolishing it really,
Big criminal.
it would be a giant shame.
I think, we'd sort of been following it, there was a 5-lot I won't go through it, going
Oh,
back
yes,
to
it was
the
a
planning
that's
board.
right,
is-
5-lot subdivision.
But we
that
wouldn't
was
have all the
passed.
details, but I think generally a number of us were aware that this, of course, when you visit 85 Eastway, it sits right up on that hill, so.
Yeah.
So the question is, then, we're in support of this. I suppose we can mobilize our energies, among other things, to look at the property history that would be
Yeah, that would be really
required
helpful,
for,
actually.
recommending the action by the town board potentially for landmarking the structure as it gets moved to a new location in its neighborhood. That might take, a couple months or so to get something like that done. I'm not sure what else would be needed.
I mean, at the same time, while I'm waiting for that, I can always start working on, there's gotta be a foundation plan done. I mean, there are building issues that have to be taken care of in the process, so, this is like a multi-fold project.
It is, and it seems like the town of Southampton has a multitude of these types of unique circumstances with historic buildings or
Interesting.
structures that are
Mhm.
potentially possibly being demolished or otherwise, but we've had a lot moved around, shuffling from place to place. in all the communities out here. So it's not an unusual circumstance.
Okay, good.
And I think that, there's a public awareness that part of the historic preservation dynamic in the town of Southampton, which is such a dynamic real estate environment, has taken some unique forms. And this may be another example of
Yep.
those unique forms. So we're willing to endorse the project
Okay.
and wish good luck. And past experience teaches to some degree that there'll be some downs as you try to make your way up
Yeah,
to getting
Shannon
this
wouldn't know about
project done. But nothing is easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have our endorsement for it.
Fantastic. So I guess the initial thing would be to fill out the landmarks application, which is,
Yes.
sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
And,
If you can find it on our website.
no, I found it.
Okay.
I got it. Getting better at it. Yeah, only after 45 years I'm figuring it out, but getting there. So I would, in addition to that, so you will work on somewhat of the history of the building itself?
Yes, we'll find out what we can and
Okay.
dig through.
I'll look as well, but I just,
The historic newspapers and other records that might be around.
yeah,
And
I would imagine you have better
probably we
access
would,
than I do too. Yeah, to this.
inquire the Office of Town Historian, which might also have material associated with either Atterbury or the Shinnecock Hills.
Okay. All right. Onward we move, I guess. What do we got?
Okay,
Well, thank you.
very good, very good.
There's some push pins over here.
Can I ask you, how many pieces do you lift it in?
One piece.
Really? So the
I
whole
have
thing?
a really cool video of one that we did before that was 15,000 square feet. Now,
And
this
what-
one is 8,000, but the movement of it is really cool. It's
one
very
piece?
interesting.
Well, definitely videos, how
Yeah.
we get,
I have
take
a
a
friend-
film of it.
I have a friend that wants to do kind of a, what do they call, documentary on it, because it's such an interesting thing to go through. And saving an old house like this, who doesn't really want to do it?
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful thing, I hate to rip it down.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful house.
Absolutely.
We're just
Thank
trying
you.
to keep it from the neighbors, so because it's just so we don't get so many opinions. I just, the
Right,
fewer
right.
opinions are better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks for coming out tonight, too.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Get back to our ordinary agenda. We have a demolition application for 237 Noyak Road. This is a shoreline structure that
Yeah, it's off of Noyak Road.
on
Down a
on a
driveway.
long driveway.
Yes.
You go past 4 other houses on the
Right.
driveway
Right.
to get there.
When you first come off Noyak, the houses are big and new, but they're on small lots. And then there's an ordinary house, and then this one was at the end, by the water. And it's hard to tell when it comes from, it could be 1960s just as easily as it's 1941.
It looks like it's a whole bunch of volumes stuck
It's
together.
obviously been modernized.
The only thing I could find that seemed original was I looked in the windows and I found the original fireplace was there.
Yep.
But it was a pretty simple, straightforward fireplace. It wasn't anything major.
And not to hold it this one up or the others, it seemed we're starting to lack interior photos with the applications, which are helpful, just not necessarily in the case of what we're talking about currently, but I would hate to see an application that didn't have them, hold them up, so I guess people should be encouraged to submit those, I'll just say that.
Well, that's something to call attention to when we get the
Right,
applications
well, this one,
observed,
right,
yeah.
came in, I think, a little bit late, but that's,
Yeah.
I noticed it, but it wasn't worth,
There's also no proposed of what they're gonna do, so,
no, there's no
Yeah.
proposal.
So,
you know, they're just tearing it down.
it was not on the 1938 aerial imagery, but an affidavit that was filed in 2002 for a certificate of occupancy had the then owner say that they had basically had a survey, found a survey with the house present in 1948. So the house was sometimes between 1938 and 48, and the AYB on the property record is 1940. So that's about, the character of the history of the house anyway.
Yeah. You can see it was
But
a
obviously, it's
little seaside
I
cottage.
don't, I don't think
Yeah.
it had a 1940 triangle and a gable.
No.
It's like a 60s
So,
Yeah.
so if there's no problem with the demolition, I'll file a report that there's no objectionable critical comment associated with it.
And I did check, you can't even see it from Noyak Road. I mean, you might, the water, obviously, you could see it from, but
If it's obscure,
It's a- yeah.
That's, so, okay, we can do that in, and 13 Ochre Lane, a revisit. Charles, do we have anybody on for 13 Ochre Lane?
I see no hands.
Okay, thank you.
There are some people on, but I don't see any hands.
We didn't file a response after our December consideration of it, and the question is that, Jeff, you first raised a question about the roof arrangement, and Bill, you followed up with it. Thank you for doing that. And subsequently, the architect redrew plans
Yes.
for the project, which were circulated to everybody. Bill, you found them satisfactory for
Yes,
improvement?
What Jeff and I had mentioned about sort of moving the second floor back and lowering the roof line of it so that the house doesn't go from small to large, it goes from small to medium to large, it's more of a staging. He also then added a roof skirt to divide the two-story portion of the back of the house in two, again, kind of visually
Breaking
reducing
it
the
down,
scale
yeah.
of it. And he moved the second floor back far enough that the original front gable with the hip with the dormer on it and the little triangular gable vent all remain now. So I thought, he heard what we said, and
Yeah,
he did a nice job in accommodating us.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll respond with,
No objection.
the plans are okay and help retain some of the original character of the house without having it overwhelmed by the original design.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so that's very good.
Oh, so who's going to do the response?
I can do the response, so
Okay.
if I need help, I'll get a hold of you.
Okay.
So we, no certificate of appropriateness discussions at the moment. referrals. We had one from the ZBA, which is the 2297 Montauk Highway, Bridgehampton.
I have Carl Benincasa wants to come up.
Okay, Carl? Yep. So we are here in Bridgehampton. This is 2022 aerial located on Main Street. It was a lot that had a residential house that had actually 2 apartments in it, I believe, before it was bought and demolished. It sits on the south side of Montauk Highway. This is an office building located here. They put on a recent addition on the back of that office building a year or so ago. This is a residential setting along Church Lane and back. Some of this area of Church Lane was proposed by AKRF as a place for historic district designation as well in the Bridgehampton Hamlet area. This is a house converted to business use, small on a very narrow parcel on the east side of the parcel where this is going to occur, and then these are 2 relatively new office buildings that have been constructed as well. This parcel is, while blank, is owned by the fire department, and prospectively another office building would be constructed there and associated with the fire department functions. And this is the community house in Bridgehampton. The ZBA asked for our comments. I did send around materials for you to mull over. And basically let me, including what we did get the site plan there. This is the picture I just showed you. What I did was to graphically bring together the site plan that is being proposed for the new office building and the parking lot and the separate apartment complex that, not complex, a separate apartment house, 2 apartment house that is being proposed. Kind of what is a problem with this is that there is certainly going to be the installation of a very large parking area that is going to be accessed by a new curb cut on Montauk Highway into the property. Lots of pavement, lots of hard surfaces covering the ground there. The building also, I don't think, doesn't make a big difference to me, but it might make a difference to some others. The building, with respect to Montauk Highway, is located, its facade is located at an angle, front facade at an angle. Traditionally in Bridgehampton, the facade has been parallel to the run of the highway. I'm not sure it's a big aesthetic question that's there. Uh,
So basically,
This is a rendering a little bit fanciful to some degree because all this green doesn't exist on the property on Church Street and around the property. So it's a little embellished with softened green elements there. So the question that is really probably somewhat important is the placement of a building like this on the site itself. One of the things, I circulated the criteria for the judgment of the compatibility of new construction in an area like this. And some of the compatibility issues are scale, massing, the aesthetic ones of texture and materials and color are there as well. And the spacing between buildings. And one of the things that I don't, just to go back and try to recall for you let me see if I can get the spacing between buildings. The proposal is really to put the office building very close to the line on where you have this very narrow adjoining property, which has a very close location to its property line. I think the distance is it's 10 feet from this on this side, and this structure is 8 feet from the property line. So it would be 18 feet between the buildings. One of the things that characterizes Bridgehampton to some degree is that you could have a lot of buildings with spaces between them, side yards that provide some visual perception into the property and provides what people I think find a pleasant characteristic of Bridgehampton. So the ZBA is looking for comments from us. And the question then is, what comment? Martha, you want to offer something?
I don't know where to begin with how horrible I think this would be for the town. It's just another parking lot to already what is growing with parking. The traffic in and out of there is horrific. This is.
Have to use the microphone.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? This is a very small, lovely community called the Triangle, where a lot of people live and have very much a community feeling. They don't want this office building next to them. The scale of it is huge.
But just as one point, the traffic issue is not our issue. So, I mean, that may be an overall issue for the planning board or others. But our question is related to the.
It's terrible. It's too close to other properties. The other side of it is residential. The Triangle is a lovely little community. I just think it'd be, I just think it's not in keeping with the rest of the Main Street, which, congratulations, has achievement to get it landmarked. And to put this in, sort of, the timing of it is really bad.
Okay, well, collect those comments. Jeff?
I agree with the fact, if this is this historic district is here now, this does not belong in it. It belongs, if anywhere, like somewhere where car dealerships are, or a big new medical park, right near where Road 39 goes into Old Montauk Highway. That's fine. It just does not belong in the downtown area. It's not appropriate looking. It would not be appropriate to have that sea of parking, because unless they're letting everybody use it on the weekends, which even then, who wants a big parking lot in the middle of town?
Why would we have a landmark Main Street?
Right.
Why would we put this in?
It doesn't make sense.
The site is zoned for Hamlet office, I think.
Maybe Carl knows.
Yeah, it's.
So
It's
the question is,
8O.
it's legitimate to have somebody apply for an office structure there.
Right,
So
it's Hamlet Office Residential.
Hamlet office and
So they're-
residential mixed use.
Right, so one of the variances is because they're disconnecting the two parts of it. They're supposed to, because of the size of the office building, they're supposed to have 3 apartments. They're supposed to be on the second floor of the building. So one of the variances is to build 2 apartments in an outer building. So there's a variance for taking it out of that building, and there's a variance because they're only providing 2 apartments when they're supposed to provide 3. So then they're also, the front building, as you say, is 10 feet off the right side property line in the aerial photo, when it's supposed to be 15. The apartment all the way at the south end of the property is 11 feet off the property when it's supposed to be 15. My first thought when I looked at the buildings was that it was something in an industrial park. All the trees are gone, all the vegetation is gone, the historic house is gone, and this has nothing to cue from any of the other buildings in the area. It just, it's just a whim of somebody to design this. They did, and they never took into consideration the fact that this is an historic district. And the historic district has been in the works for several years, so it's not as if, oh, surprise, I just bought this and, I didn't know I had to do that.
Right.
Would,
Vicky would like to say something.
would scaling down the size of an office structure reduce the need for 3 apartments down to 2, downsize the number of parking spaces that are on a plan like
Yes,
the one that
yes.
we've seen?
And that's one of the other variances, is that the parking is supposed to be 10 feet from the property line, and they're proposing it to be 2 feet. So at that point, with a 6-inch curb and 6 inches for a fence, you've got 1 foot for any sort of vegetation to grow. So there really can't be any buffer between it and the neighbor unless it's on the neighbor's property.
Right.
So,
And the building in the back, as you see in that rendering, that's the apartment. It's 1 story, it's 2 apartments, they're each 450 square feet. They're basically 1 bedroom, a bathroom, and another room that is 9 by 15, and due to the kitchen being along one side, it's really 7 by 15, and that's your living room, your dining room, and your kitchen.
so that, also that abuts Church Lane,
Yes,
which is a street in which many of the houses, they have been of smaller size, but built in the 1920s, many of them, and provide a certain, provide a nice historic look to an old village. So this certainly would, as shown in this design, be a sore thumb on Church Lane
yes.
with respect to its relationship to the other buildings. Yeah.
It's also interesting, the entrance exit onto Church is actually wider than Church Street. So the driveway into this is wider than the road it comes in off of. One of my thoughts was if they made that only an exit, they could do entrance and exit from Montauk Highway. If they only did an exit onto that, it would allow people to get out into the other streets where they could turn at a light, making it easier to exit. That would allow the back building to be shoved over a little bit and not require the variance in the back. But when you see the elevations of that building, the elevation you see here is exactly the same as the elevation that faces Church. We were just talking about Halsey and how, a couple of dormers and things would help that. If that's what you're looking at from Church, I'm not sure how you could help it.
It reminds me of the, public bathrooms building or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For town.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and the sides aren't much better, just simple door and a couple of windows. I can't back the variances, and definitely the demolition of the house. I'd hate to see that as well.
I think the approach to Bridgehampton to the historic district is important, because all the outlying buildings, as you push this, all this lovely turn of the century, if you like, either side. And I think the office buildings, the development office buildings, the gray ones, as much as they are, they're at least scale-wise in keeping. And this would just be a real light.
Yeah. One of the things is that, in a sense, our comments to the ZBA generally would not involve the architectural design, the texture and materials of the building. That's something that would probably be assessed and rendered in a certificate of appropriateness discussion if this ever comes to us for that purpose. But basically, we're here to look at what the variance issues were with respect to the parking lot placement and what that means for the look of Main Street, and the buildings, the scale of the buildings, and the placement of the buildings, the width between the buildings. That's kind of the issue associated with the ZBA application that we're supposed to respond to. So there'll be, a chance to take up the kind of more pure landmarks board issues at a further point down the road.
I think it would be best to direct your comments to those aspects of the variances that have some direct relationship to the issuance of a COA. The scale of the buildings, the height, the second building. They're asking for a variance to not have the apartments on the second floor. If they didn't ask for that variance, they'd be on the second floor, and they wouldn't need that second building. Those are the ways.
Dave, you gotta come to the mic.
Really? No, I'm shouting. I don't have anything else to say, Charles.
Also, I think, looking at the one house to the east, which I assume is an AKRF, the remaining house.
To the east, yes.
So
That's also a historic resource nominee for a KRF, yes.
Right. So I guess that would be a concern, anything that's impinging, to me on that.
Yes, it would impact that clearly in terms of being so close. The other house being so small, it would be a dramatic difference
Yes,
to
I
be
think
noted
we
there.
would, I feel an obligation to protect that to the best.
Just to
our
your
ability.
comment, Bill, that the house is already demolished.
Oh,
That
it
was-
is?
we-
Yeah, the one on the spot.
It was done
It is?
a year and a
Okay.
half ago, over our objection in
okay.
That was the Elaine Benson.
in a report.
Yeah, they had the truck sitting there while it
Yeah,
came.
so,
We reviewed it March 2023, and we objected.
All right. Okay.
Did we have someone online for comment on this agenda item?
Carl Benincasa.
Carl Benincasa, the applicant.
Okay, Carl, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I just reiterate, the variances that we are requesting are side yard setback 15 to 10 feet, a two-story office building. And then for the residential building, minimum side yard from 15 feet to 11.37 feet. Total side yard from 30 to 50 to 15. And then as Mr. Wilcox and members of the board mentioned, we are asking for relief to allow the apartments in the second building on the ground floor that are required, and a relief from 3 apartments to 2. We are not asking for relief for parking in any way. We are complying with the required parking under the Southampton Town Code. I would note that this property is designated a non-contributing asset in the resolution of adoption that created this historic district last month.
That's for sure.
Next door is a contributing asset, and as noted, it has a side yard of 7.8 feet. I would also note that 2 buildings down, the structures 2 and 3 buildings down, I believe, are positioned at an angle to Montauk Highway and are not directly parallel with Montauk Highway. Those buildings were CO'd, one several years ago, one recently. So I do think that the building, again, the character of the building, the aesthetic of the building is not something that's being referred to you. The CBA is only talking about positioning. There is no relief for bulkhead. There is no relief for height or for pyramid. It's just about that side yard relief, which is consistent with other lots, certainly on the on this side of Montauk Highway in the HO district. As noted next door, one is within 8 feet, and 2 down the street is within 4 feet of the adjoining lot. So the factoring in that this was determined to be a non-contributing asset and in that it is, the relief requested is consistent with the makeup of other structures in this area. I would just ask the board to be cognizant of that when they consider their referral. And again, I know most of your concern seems to be with the appearance of the building. Certainly that will come when building permits are applied for. You'll have an opportunity to weigh in on that. Right now, the zoning board is just asking for the dimensional referral on the dimensional relief request.
Carl, could you just identify yourself for the record?
Sure, Carl Benincasa, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, New York, for the applicant.
Can we object on the
I'm
side?
sorry, I'm not there in person, I'm a bit under the weather, so I thought it better I appear virtually.
Certainly, we don't want you to put us under the weather, so.
Exactly.
Martha, did you have a comment?
Well, if all we're asking is to talk about the scale of the.
I'm sorry, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, I'm very sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you don't have to push the
I
button.
don't
as
think
long
your
as-
microphone-
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now I can-
Okay, I don't have to push the button.
I think that may mute you.
Basically,
When you push the button, you turn it off.
oh, beg your
That's why
pardon.
I'm freaking
That's,
back here.
okay, sorry about that. I'm going to object on the size then, if that's what we're asking for, if that's what you're talking about, the variance, I'm going to object on the size because it looks out of proportion. And I know that we're not supposed to say subjective things like that, but the scale of it doesn't seem right. I'm not talking about the design of it, I'm just simply talking about the scale and being so close to the other houses. There's a bit of air around things in Bridgehampton, and I think we should try and keep that. And if the height is anything, it seems much higher than everything else that we have there. So are we talking about the height, or is that not part of the scale?
No, the building department reviewed our application, and the relief is essentially limited to, with the front building, side yard. That's it, distance from the side yard, not height. Pyramid is not applicable in the zoning district, not height, and, not lot coverage or anything like that.
Okay, well, I've said what I think.
Okay, well, thanks. I think one of the questions is that does connect to some of our comments here is that the placement of the building, a large building, next to a very small building, cheek by jowl, does present some problem. And so, you know, that kind of question that in some way you're pointing to, it would loom over something that is going to be seen as petite and inappropriate, even though it's the historic building next door, you know, so. Anyway, I just wanted to say that there is some connection, even though he meets the requirement otherwise, you know.
The bank has lots of air around it,
Yes.
so it can take the height. This
Right.
doesn't have that kind of air
Right.
around it.
So,
So there's typically, I think, 5 tests, they say, when you're going for a variance. The first one being is it in character with the neighborhood. And the extreme development of this site, the size of the building, the size of the parking area, the loss of all the trees that are on there, is not in keeping with the other houses and the other buildings along Montauk Highway or on Church Street. One of the others is there any effect on the environment? And the loss of the trees and the fact that there's really going to be very little landscaping except for between the building and the street is affecting the environment. Also, is the requirement for the variances?
Not to interrupt, the property is clear cut as it is right now. And just,
But-
I just wanted to note that.
Okay, so it was clear cut, but was that the right thing to do when it was done? And my comment is it shouldn't have, in keeping with the other buildings on that section of the street. There's a lot of very mature trees along the road. There's definitely a lot of trees along Church. One of the other points is, are the variances self-created? And being that there's nothing on this lot, all of the problems are created by the size of the office building. If it was smaller and more suitable in scale and mass to the other buildings along there and to the size of the property, it wouldn't need to put the other building out in the back, and it wouldn't need as much parking, thereby it would suit the character of the neighborhood better.
okay, thanks. Very telling comment. Yeah. Anything else members of the board want to offer for commentary? Well, what I will do is draft and try to synthesize the comments. I'll pass it around for editorial lambasting to the board members with respect to what we have until a few days before February 1st to get a response in, so do have time to consult and try to make something coherent from the comments that we have. Any last word from Carl Benacasa?
No, I know, Mr. DeSessa is on as well. I don't know if he wants to say anything, but I am, fine. Nothing further to say on my part.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So other than that, if there is no other comment on this, we will move to our next agenda item. Which is 126. South Country Road. A report was circulated to everyone. Let me see if I have it here. Or did it get buried completely? Okay, so we have an application that was filed. The application is complete in what I gather, both from the report that has been generated for it and the information that's before us. Did either of you want to kind of just make a summary for public consumption on the nature of this without having to go into it too deeply?
Yes, I'll be happy to talk about the history of it, if you would talk a little bit about the building itself. There's portions of the history of this property that seem to be fairly well understood. It was owned by multiple generations of the Tuttle family. The current owners purchased it from William Ansel Tuttle. And before that, his parents owned the property, Harold and Caroline Tuttle. And then prior to that time, it becomes a little bit more murky as to exactly which Tuttle family members owned the property. But what is fairly well understood is that it was likely originally constructed for John Tuttle, who is also known as Hunter John Tuttle, who came to this area in the mid-1700s with his wife, Sarah Wells. Their first children were alternately born in Cutchogue and Spionk, which is what this area was known at the time, but all of their later children from about 1760 onward were born in Spionk. So we know that they were living locally by 1730. And there's various mentions of John Tuttle in the town record books. He was known to have had shares of property out on what is now Dune Road in the Cupsog area, where he ran cattle with some of the other folks who had property out there. And there's a record of the mark on his cattle, and there's a record of another early deed which references being adjoining the property of a John Tuttle. So it does appear that the oldest volume of this house, which is a salt box volume, is probably associated with John Tuttle and Sarah Wells. There's several different accounts of the history of our community which mention them as earliest settlers in this area. If you look at the tax maps for the area, you can see sort of the relic configuration of the lots here, which extended all the way from, at one time, the bay, all the way north up to what is now Old Country Road. And there are some records showing the subdivision of the last pieces of these properties in recent years. So it has a long history of Tuttle family ownership. And Ed, you brought up some of the early maps that I had not looked at that have some different Tuttle family names in them associated with the property than what I could piece together from the genealogical information. So I think we need to do a little bit of revision of that section of the report to reflect the map information. So that will be done for further consideration before we move forward on the resolution. But it's a beautiful home, extremely well preserved. The owners love the history of it. And they have gone to great lengths in their maintenance and care of the home to preserve things, even such as these doors, which in some cases, they're walled up behind the doors, but they left the doors in place because they wanted to show where the door was and what the door looked like, even though the door no longer operates as such. It was really, it was a real treat to go through this house and see, what's been done over the years. It definitely has been added on to. The original salt box volume, according to the written records, was added on to with a large addition on the western side about 100 years after its construction. It may be that was associated with the boarding house era in our community, the late 1860s and onward, when the Long Island Railroad had extended to our area, and we had a lot of visitors who stayed in the boarding houses. And this was known to be a boarding house at that time. And then there's additions on the back, I think, from more recent owners of the house, but these front sections were left largely, untouched. You can see the timber framing in there, the numbered structural members. It's fabulous. I know, Bill, did you want to say a few things about the structure?
As you get towards the end of the report, there's a,
This is the photographs, looking for the report.
Oh, this is Bill's photos.
yeah, these are my photos.
Okay.
Stephanie's report was done separately from these. So you can see right there, as the brick wall starts to curve,
Yep.
at one point, this did have the circular brick cellar.
Yeah, and the current owner told us that they at one point opened up the whole cellar, and it was done by having people manually dig the soil out, and horses actually dragged the loads of soil out from underneath the house to build what is now full foundation under much of the house.
Yeah, there's a lot of just peeled logs with the tops flattened off, used as floor joists, and then over time, other joists were added in between them, some of the older ones being rough sawn, some of the newer ones being dimensional, more current. Yeah, that was an area that they created to do the hearth in the fireplace. There was evidence of where the original chimney came through the mass of the house, and that was closed up. The two fireplaces, although by no means new, are not original to the house.
Yeah, I was kind of looking for an interior chimney that
Yes.
show up, but
Yeah,
they're
so-
located on
Yeah,
the
when we get
margins.
all the way to the end, we'll see the old photograph of the house, which has two interior chimneys on it prior to them being removed and add, there you go, that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So
Yes.
there's the chimneys running through the house.
Right.
What's interesting here is there's a porch on the right-hand side, and it's difficult to see, but as you're looking through sort of where the gate would be, there's a post standing there, and it has a bracket on either side of it, as if the porch had run across it at one point. And if yeah, there you go, you can see it more the bottom of it than the top. And behind it are those two sort of dark boards running horizontally, which are shielding part of the window right behind that, yeah, and then the other window as well. It almost looks like part of the roof of that porch has collapsed behind the post and is now leaning against the wall. There's further debris on the ground further to the left, and if you scale the distance between the four posts that are there, you get 3 regular spaces, and if you continue it, you get 2 more to the end of the house. So it really looks like that porch ran all the way to the end of the house.
What year did you guesstimate this was?
We don't have an age for
Well,
this.
in the town record books, there is a record of a lot of the major roads in our area being paved at about 1920. And this specific road was mentioned for, I didn't say paving, it said widening and improvements. You can see it's an unpaved at this point in time.
Right.
The other piece of evidence that we have is there was a newspaper clipping from 1926 that indicated that there was a carpenter who was doing it sounded like a major renovation job, and specifically on the Harold Tuttle house, which is this house. So my guess is that this is a pre-1920 picture, and that some of this dereliction and also moving of the fireplaces and removal of the central chimney there may have been done at about that time, so about 1926.
You don't think it had anything to do with the 1938 hurricane?
No, that picture predates the 1938
Okay.
hurricane.
Because you'd mentioned the shutters being
Right.
closed, some type of possible storm, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there were
Okay.
other storms too, so.
So, excellent forensic photographs of the interior of the structure. It's always, to me, I'm very impressed by it all, you know.
There's so much that's visible in this structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I think
Yeah,
So
sometimes
this is
with your
the
photos,
ice house
Bill,
element?
That's the ice house.
Yes.
We actually we saw the application that included demolition of this ice house quite a few years ago. There's, the property next door underwent a lot of renovation and expansion, et cetera, and they ran the driveway out to the back, which is right behind that fence over on the right-hand side. And they had originally jogged the driveway to get around the ice house, because the ice house was bisected by the property line. And for whatever reason, I forget, his building department, somebody wanted that jog around the ice house because of emergency vehicles or something or other, so they made them take the side of the ice house down. And it happened when the Kings were not there, and they came home and found that, half of the ice house had been destroyed. So, but their half remains.
say, Bill, with your photos, I think to have them before site visit, then you could go look for, you just show so many interesting things that might be missed if a person wasn't really focused on it. So thank you. Very helpful.
Well, in your in your reports, you propose that there are elements to the history of this house and the structure of this house that meet four of the criteria set out in town code for a landmark. And the question is, do we want to consider these tonight in the resolution that I sent around earlier, and provide the revised report for it later on? Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Well, why don't we then look at this resolution, and just for the record, I'll read it. Whereas the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board received a complete application for historic site designation from Merrill King, owner, for a house at 126 South Country Road, Remsenburg, with the tax map number. And whereas historical research was undertaken and a landmark qualification report titled Historic Summary of the Tuttle Family House, January 2024, was produced by Landmarks Board members Stephanie O. Davis and William Hine. And whereas the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board, having reviewed said landmark qualification report for the Tuttle Family House at its January 16, 2024 meeting, finds the site reported above meets four criteria for consideration as town landmark per Town of Southampton Code, Section 330, 321B, 1. Namely, the house possesses special character or historic or aesthetic interest of value as part of the cultural, political, economic, or social history of the locality. And that's due to its long association with the Tuttle family, whose members resided in the Remsenburg Spionk hamlet for over 2 centuries, and whose family name is now associated with 2 private cemeteries and a street. Its former use as a boarding house during the boarding house era of our local history, and as the site of the first post office established in Remsenburg following the renaming of the southern portion of Spionk in 1895. B is identified with historic personages due to its likely original construction for Hunter John Tunhill and his family, some of the first settlers of the Remsenburg Spionk hamlet. C embodies the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type, period, or style due to the saltbox form of its original volume. And E, because of a unique location or singular physical characteristics, represent an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood due to its prominent and highly visible location in the midst of other properties constructed and used by related Tuthill family members, including the adjoining Academy, a town landmark. Now therefore be it resolved, the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board so recommend designation to the Town Board of Southampton. So are we in agreement? Do you want to make the motion, or?
I'll be happy to make the motion.
Okay, Stephanie moves and Martha seconds. Any further discussion and consideration? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we see raised hands from Barbara Roberts and Vicky Kahn on Zoom as well. So we have that in hand, and we'll get together on the material to add and enrich the existing qualification report.
Great, that would be great.
Good work.
Okay, 11 Walnut Avenue, I do not believe there's anything new, and 149 South Country Road, Remsenburg, is still on
Nothing
the
new there
agenda
either.
for CPF discussion, I guess, for easements. As the agenda notes, the Bridgehampton Historical District has been approved, and a complicated piece of business. Actually not that complicated now that it's done, but it was complicated getting to that point, and the second time around should be much easier for the next historic district that might be entertained. And I wonder, is Remsenburg and Spionk in any kind of mood for evaluating?
Certain factions, I think, would be receptive to it. There are some folks who I've heard might not be as receptive, but there are certain people who would be.
Well, if there is a group of people who have some organization, and if they would, I think, make an overture to the Landmarks Board suggesting it,
Okay.
and inviting the opportunity to communicate with them about it,
Okay.
I think we can, find out how much vitality the idea has.
We can certainly, Bill and I can combine our efforts in that area.
Mhm.
We know who to speak to.
So,
So congratulations to you for
Yeah.
getting this done.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Great legacy. Does everybody know in the town? Do they know what it means? Has there been any kind of letter sent out?
well, the town clerk sent a letter
Nothing in
out
West
to,
Nothing really?
or the resolution of
Same
adoption required the
edition
town
that
clerk to
we read.
inform all the
Guess they thought I was more important.
people who, property owners who are in the
That was a different
district,
section.
informing them about it. And I noticed that on the GIS system, when I put the input for 2297 Montauk Highway to check on things right away, up comes this property is part of the Bull's Head Main Street Bridgehampton district, and I assume that goes for the other properties as well. So that got done very, very quickly as well. So, okay. Other matters, town-owned cemeteries, I have nothing to offer on that. I did not send out information on the nomination process for state and National Historic Register. I said I would at the last month's meeting, but given the dynamics of things going forward here, I thought I would hold off, and I might send that information along in a week or so to have you take an opportunity to look at that. Stony Brook Southampton Historic Buildings received short shrift at the so-called conversation held by the Southampton Press with members of the Southampton community, politicians locally, and the busload of Stony Brook officials who came out to what is it, the Union Restaurant in Bowden Square, that discussed mostly serious issues associated with planning for that campus, where there are very powerful needs, and a hospital, a new hospital, possible workforce housing opportunities, reopening the Shinnecock train station for transportation adjacent to the camp. So there are a lot of things. Fred Thiel did mention it, and just passing, but it clearly was, it's part of the issues there, but there were people who were at that session, which went for an hour and 45 minutes, and it was a good discussion. It's on the 27 East webpage if you are interested in going through it. There's also, because it involves leaders of the community, there's a lot of self-praise and backpatting for the individuals there. But anyway, it did not get elevated notice. So that, and that's probably good, because to try and hype the issue at an occasion like that, it would get run over anyway, because that was not the frame of mind of anybody in the room with respect to talking about the Southampton campus. The person responsible for facilities from the Stony Brook campus was at that meeting, as was a couple of other people, including the new planning person, who seemed to be eclipsed by the person who was talking about facilities all the time. But anyway, there is that kind of session that was undertaken, and you can find it on the internet. Certified local government activity. There's not been anything that I know, except a few webinars have been sent our way. Some of them, well, most of them cost money to sign up for, $40 or 35. If I joined the NAPC, when I signed up, they charged my credit card, but they sent no acknowledgement that I was now a member. So there are loose ends to a lot of this, I think, that probably needs some evaluation by somebody. But anyway, I think there's some question going forward as to, we're supposed to keep current, have some updating of training like many other professionals in the world who operate by educating ourselves, and some of this requires some financial commitments, and I think at some point coming forward in the coming months, I'll address a more comprehensive issue of getting appropriate financial resources into landmarks and historic preservation activity, including board member, supporting board members more with many different kinds of things. I think, Susan, you subscribe to newspapers.com, or do you have a historic newspaper subscription someplace?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I don't, because I didn't want to pay the money for it, so I try to get mine from, I do subscribe to LongIslandGenealogy.com, so that one I.
Is that's a cost?
Yeah, I think it was
so,
50.
I mean, there are these things. I don't, at one point, Long Island Genealogy did have a cost associated with it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it show up on my PayPal lately, but it did reoccur for a number of years.
Right. Well, I subscribe to several genealogical and historical services that some of them are better than
Well,
others, but
yeah.
but it's a couple $100 all told, and
It
that's,
is,
it's not easy
would-
to,
adds up,
yeah.
would add up, so.
So- Okay, anyway, I just wanted to call that to your attention.
I think there's reports that have to be filed with CLG, like annual reports.
Yes, there are those too, and the question is, what staff do we have to make the reports? But thanks for reminding us. Basically, it does require some form of support that has, I shouldn't say been neglected, but has been absent from the activities of Landmarks and Historic Districts Board. There's a lot of stuff that really, I think, should be looked at in terms of if they want to have a successful program going forward. It's not going to be easy recruiting new individuals to take on responsibilities that this board has absorbed and engaged in over the past 10 years or so. So there are really long-term issues as well that have got to be looked at. Any other business that, Susan?
Just quickly, I'm working on the construction. The demo list is caught up. The construction I need to finish, I'll try to get 2023, that long list out by the end of this week. And anybody has comments, they can either send them or tell me at the next meeting. It's an ongoing kind of thing. And I'll prepare that summary, so I'm working on that. So that's the one. And then the second question, I just wanted to comment on that, is we had mentioned the maintenance grants. So were those going to be advertised, or are we just?
Well, I thought the plan going forward was to send out letters to the
Okay.
private owners. And I did receive an overture from one owner beforehand that, and it turns out that their landmark doesn't qualify because it's not their primary residence. And that might be the case for a whole bunch
Yeah,
of
that's probably gonna be.
private
something
owners,
here.
so, but we'll try it and then see where it goes.
And I'm not doing to push, I just, I had just heard through the grapevine that might be one of the nonprofit, out of the nonprofit group that might be interested. I'm not sure about that. So should they just inquire from you directly if they're,
Yes,
Okay.
Okay. And there was a resolution, we didn't set up the rules, but there was a resolution passed by the town board, I believe, 5 years ago or so, 4 years ago,
Yeah.
with respect to nonprofits.
Okay, I'll just have, if they're interested, I'll have them. I'm not trying to push you into
Well,
however you were gonna handle that, but that was just, I
Well, we
just
have
hadn't
the-
noticed anything, so I'll
One
mention.
aspect of this is, we have somebody who is on a new experience curve with,
Okay.
working with the Landmarks Board.
Okay.
So, that will take some time to,
Who is that? What's their name?
Christine Mortis?
Yes.
Something like
Yeah.
that. She's really in the building department.
Right.
She's not going in the same capacity that
Janet.
Janet did or
Renee?
Renee
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Is she gonna be doing our minutes?
No idea. I don't think so.
Yeah, because there was no outreach from her on that.
You have to speak with Janice.
Well, we'll ask her to come to a meeting, maybe, if we, yeah, it could be maybe in February to discuss a number of things associated with Landmarks business.
I think you should make an appointment with her.
We're a board, we need certain kinds of help and support, and so, we have to explore the territory. Okay. Anything further that needs to be put on the table? If not, it is now 8:41, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.